Rink-wide Vancouver's Jeff Paterson is our Canucks reporter. Fun game last night.
There have been a lot of them, but yeah, I would add this one to the mix. And look, I think with this preponderance of home games the rest of the way, that this will be the norm now. That lots of good opponents coming in, stakes are high in terms of conference and first overall, so there's going to be something to play for just about every night out. And the Canucks themselves have been worth the price of admission most nights. And the ticket buying public, they want to be entertained, but I think at the end of the night they want to see the home team win. And boy, they've done a lot of that this year at Rogers Arena. 19 victories on home ice. And I was looking at this earlier in the week. They had a 30-win home ice season back in 2009, 2010. 30 is the high water mark. Beyond that, 27. Well, they're at 19 now with all these home games remaining. I think we're looking at one of, if not the best ever, home ice seasons in the history of the Vancouver Canucks.
Which helped sell tickets last I checked.
And the vibes are great too. Especially on Thursday, Fridays. Well, no Fridays, but Thursday, Saturday nights, that crowd wants to have fun.
Rick Tocchet talked about it, about coming back from the road trip and that first game back. He didn't quite build in the cliche of first game back is always a tough one, but he kind of said that. And it did cross my mind. That was a bit ripe for the picking in terms of just, letting down a little bit. And they had their moments where they let down. But overall, that's a nice victory coming home after that road trip.
Yeah, and I thought Thatcher Demko talked about it too, that just because there was the week off and then the All-Star game and then the 5-game trip, it had been almost 3 weeks since they had played a game in front of the home fans. So they had missed their people, if you will. And that first game back after a lengthy trip is essentially another road game. It's a 5-game road trip, but then you're playing in a 6th city, even if it's a home game. And they stayed overnight in Chicago and then flew back. So they've applied some science to this a few times this year. And they felt that was in their best interest. And I would agree with you. They were the better team. You're not always going to get 3 goals from distance the way that they did. So their goaltender was better than Detroit's goaltender. Their star players elevated. And, for Elias Lindholm to score 2 in his debut in Carolina and 2 in his home debut, sense of occasion for this guy. And there is something there, I think, on that all Swedish line with Paterson and Höglander. And, that was a pretty routine 3 primary assist night for Elias Pettersson. I didn't think he dominated the hockey game, but he's in on 3 of the 4, the primary assist on 3 of the 4, and he's up to 5th in NHL scoring. So he did his part. And, even JT Miller, who I don't think is playing his best hockey, but boy, he's such a good player that you present him with that sort of opportunity. We saw it in overtime in Washington. And clearly Jeff Petrie wasn't watching the highlights of that game because, boy, did he serve that one up. Boeser with a nice screen, and JT Miller, that's the start. And that's the formula for the Canucks, right, is get the lead, add to it. And so once they got up 2-0, that's sort of been their pocket. That's been their comfort zone. And they were able to ride that out to a 4-1 victory.
Dakota Joshua. And first of all, what an awful break to enter that hand, and we hope it's not broken, coming off his career game. How do you think that third line minus him and with Mikheyev on the left side, if in the fact it's going to continue to be Mikheyev, how do you think they did? How do you think they'll do minus Dakota?
Yeah, I thought a relatively quiet night. There were a few opportunities. Connor Garland's motor's always running, and so there was one sequence in the second period where he came out from behind the net, tried to wrap around. Teddy Bluger got the rebound, and Ilya Mikeyev was fishing for a loose puck as well. But, other than that, didn't notice them an awful lot. Garland had a chance on the first shift of the hockey game. But look, I was a little surprised that Ilya Mikeyev was the choice there. You've got Phil Giuseppe, who hasn't blown the doors off anybody since his start to the season. But if you're just looking for a big body that can play straight lines and sort of replicate what Dakota Joshua brings, I thought Phil Giuseppe might be the answer there, even a Sam Lafferty. So if it doesn't work for Mikheyev, I think they've got some options waiting in the wings. But, maybe this is an opportunity for Ilya Mikheyev. Take him out of the top 6. It reduces some of the expectation of offense to some degree, although on this team, I think everybody's expected to pull their weight. Whatever the case, it's just been too long now for Mikheyev, where he hasn't been noticeable, and I think it was more of that. So we'll see if he lasts in that spot or if Rick Tocchet has to tinker, because quite frankly, where he had been playing on Tuesday night in Chicago on the 4th line, that's kind of where Ilya Mikheyev is right now. He can still contribute on the penalty kill, but there's just zero in the way of offensive expectations from him. And I thought maybe going back into Chicago would bring back some good vibes because that's the last place that he had scored. But turn the page on that storyline, and who knows what his next offensive contribution will look like. But I would say that it's precarious that he will remain in that spot. And best case scenario would be that he doesn't have to, because Dakota Joshua won't be out of the lineup for too long.
Do they have to upgrade Mikheyev by the trade deadline? Would you feel comfortable with him at this? Because the slump is now so long. Would you feel comfortable with him in a playoff series? And is there any chance that Phil Kessel is that upgrade?
And I think he's slower, guys. There was a puck race in the third period, and the defenseman sort of had to even pivot a little bit. And Mikheyev didn't win that race to the puck. I saw that race, and I was like, I think he might be slower than the start of the season.
Yeah, I wonder how much of it's in his head now when it gets beyond 20 games. He doesn't hurt the Canucks. Like, I think he's still defensively responsible. He's got a penalty killing utility, especially when Joshua is out of the lineup. I think that's an area that he can step in and contribute. But I mean, he's basically been relegated to a $5 million fringe player on this hockey club. So, can they move forward with him? Yes, he's not hurting them. They're still winning hockey games. But if there is a way to upgrade and to bring in somebody that can give you a little bit more in the here and now, and certainly into the playoffs as well, then I think that this management group is looking. I don't think that they're done. I think they recognize that the Lindholm acquisition is looking awfully good for them now with 4 goals and 5 points through 6 games. I don't think they're going big ticket shopping, but I still think that there's room to move in terms of depth players, both up front and on defense. And, my first chance to visit with you guys since Phil Kessel touched down. And look, I think they're handling this properly. I even before Phil arrived in Vancouver, I thought if he's serious about this at 36 and a half, having been out of the game since last year's playoffs, I think there is a real element of show me that you still got it. And the fact that he was willing to bypass Vancouver and go to Abbotsford and lace up with the baby Canucks, I think that's a good sign from Kessel. I think it's the right place for him at this stage. I will say that I watched about 5 minutes of raw video of him the other day in that first practice. And I know that there are clips out there. I've seen a little bit more than just the clips that were curated. In drills, he looked fine. But boy, between the drills, it was a real struggle. And I guess that's to be expected at his age and being away from the game. Like, it's one thing to skate on your own. It's another to rent ice and have a skills coach or somebody. We're talking about joining midstream, even at the American Hockey League level, with guys that have been playing for 45 or 50 games. That is not easy. And I think it's important, too, to remember, like, Vegas felt that they had better options. He played 4 games in the playoffs. They won the Stanley Cup without Phil Kessel, even though he was on their roster. The Vancouver Canucks are a first-place team without Phil Kessel. They don't need Phil Kessel, but if Kessel can get up to speed, if he can find his conditioning, and I'm going to give him every opportunity. I mean, the guy's been pro through and through, but just on day one, he looked like a guy that had been out of the game for a while and was playing catch up. So as a depth option in the event of some injuries, I think they could do worse than Phil Kessel, but I don't think, despite all these reports, that it's going to happen. And I suppose the dots certainly look like they're leading that way. I don't think they're there yet. And I still think that there's an element of proof in the pudding from Phil Kessel's side that he has to show. And so I'm curious, does he sign a PTO with Abbotsford? Does he play games in the American Hockey League? Is that next for him? It's funny, on the way out of the building after the morning skate yesterday, was walking out with Daniel and Henrik, and I said, I saw you guys put Phil through his paces there yesterday. And Daniel laughed and he said, yeah, I'm sure he's still tired. So I think they recognized that maybe it was a bit of a day one struggle for Phil Kessel.
The trade corner line I quite like for the Canucks right now as the second line. And then, Phil's probably an emergency, break glass only scenario. But at the same time, that Miller-Boeser line seems a little out of sorts right now. Heck, they couldn't even get their P's and Q's together with an empty net there with Miller a mile offside, robbing Boeser of the goal. Are you concerned at all about that top line? And would he be an option there? Again, not immediately, but in a couple of weeks' time.
Not concerned, but I will admit that there is, for the first time all season, a little bit of a red flag on Brock Boeser. And an empty net goal isn't going to cure the issues here. That, didn't score on the road trip, comes back and didn't look all that dangerous against the Detroit Red Wings. has scored in just one of the last 13 Canuck games, and it was the hat-trick game. So when he scored, he went big and got to 30, and but like my concern is that he's now gone 6 without a goal. If he doesn't score on Saturday, that's 7. I'm starting to look at everything around this hockey club through a playoff prism, and Brock Boeser can't go missing in the playoffs for 7 games at a time. He can't. I mean, he's been too important to this group. He's been too much of this team's success that I wanted to believe that, consistency was cooked into his game now. And he's only scored in 3 games since Christmas, a 3-goal game, a 2-goal game, and he had a single-goal game somewhere along the line. But, again, they need him. They need him to score. And the fact that they continue to win speaks to the depth that they've got around him, and adding Lindholm obviously helps. But I'm a little confused by his usage on the power play, that they've got him as this right shot guy stapled to the left half wall. He's had so much success this season in front of the net, tipping pucks and finding those tap-ins. The power play has gone ice cold now. I mean, 0 for its last 5 games, plus it's given up a couple of shorthanded goals. Feels to me like, why not just go right back to basics, put these guys in the positions where they are best suited and most likely to succeed. And for Brock Boeser, that's not on the half wall as the playmaking guy. It's get him to the front of the net. So, as I say, red flags only, no real concern or alarm or panic, but they need more from Brock Boeser. They do. Like, he can't just sit on 30 forever. There was one time there was talk of a 50-goal season. Now it's a question of, can he get to 40? And I hope that he can. He'll score again this year. He's not done, but he's just looked more ineffective really since the All-Star break than at any other point this
Jeff,
season.
I blame you, okay? As he said on Spitting Chicklets, I got to 30 to shut the Vancouver media up, and that was the finish line. Done and done.
Well, he said he got
Paterson
over 30, and the last time I checked, I'm not sure I agree that he's over 30.
No,
I
he's
think
not.
He's
There's a
at
math
30.
problem there.
Yes.
Yeah. Speaking of,
he's not going to shut me up. Come on.
Many have tried.
We've been trying for.
He knows that.
Speaking
one of the biggest
special
companies
teams,
in the world has tried to shut you up in BCE.
Absolutely, not happening. Speaking of special teams, they kill off all 5 Detroit power play opportunities on Thursday night. Jeff, the penalty killing percentage has crept over 80%, 13th in the league. Dare I say, do the Vancouver Canucks, Jeff, have a good penalty killing team?
Well, certainly since Christmas. Their penalty kill, really, since the middle of December, has been an absolute strength. And that's the first time we've said that in a long, long time, to the point now that this is what I'm charting, guys, around the Vancouver Canucks. Will the penalty kill league ranking outstrip the power play league ranking? Right now, the power play's gone cold. It's still in the top 10. It's tied for 9th, but penalty killing's tied for 13th. Like, the gap is closed there. And if this trend continues, it may not be that long before the Canucks penalty kill is actually more of a weapon than the power play. And who would have thought that? And certainly things that we haven't been able to say about this hockey club in a long, long time. But I think a lot of it tracks back middle of December. Pia Suter came back in the lineup. Zadorov was acquired in late November and started to hit his stride. It coincides with, again, just the continued growth and development of Noah Juleson, and what a story that has turned out to be. I mean, a penalty killing specialist, essentially, for the Vancouver Canucks. And so, they've had all of these healthy bodies, and now you add Elias Lindholm, and he's stepping in as a right shot center guy and able to kill some penalties as well. So, yeah, I mean, I think with the work of the coaching staff and give Mike Yeo and Adam Foote their flowers here as well. But this group's been in lockstep, and ultimately you need your goaltender to be your best penalty killer. And Thatcher Demko was dialed in again last night, and has been for much of this season. So all the component parts are there to continue this, I think, for the Vancouver Canucks, that, you don't have to watch other teams' power plays sort of with your hands over your eyes and fear the worst, that this is a team that has shown an ability to rise to the occasion. And in fact, in the first period, guys, last night, Detroit has 2.5 power plays because the Zadorov penalty carried over into the second. They didn't mount a shot on goal. Like, what an opportunity for the Detroit Red Wings. They had 2+ power plays in the first period and didn't get a single shot on goal. So credit to the Canucks penalty killers, stepping in the way, blocking shots, keeping them to the outside, taking away shooting lanes, all those types of things. And then ultimately, if shots get through, if Thatcher Demko can see them, he's going to stop them more often than not. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of been fun to see this reversal of fortune where a penalty kill that sunk this team so often over the last couple of seasons now seems to be able to give them a boost and turn some games in their favor.
Lastly, for me, Elias Lindholm is acquired with a 6.99 shooting percentage as a Calgary Flame. He arrives on the Vancouver Canucks. He's now shooting at 31%, 30.8 to be exact. The Canucks have wowed us in a number of statistical categories this season, but people kept on thinking, oh, the shooting percentage is just too high. It's going to regress. Well, it's only slightly. It has. Do they just do something that allows guys like it seems more than coincidental that this skilled player who's way down arrives on this team and immediately starts to shoot the lights out? Like, do they just create good chances that, if you give it to a skilled player, he's gonna convert it?
Well, I think there's that element that they've got great finishers and highly skilled guys. I think part of it too is they don't waste a lot of shots. Like some teams throw everything to the net. That's not the Canucks MO. And it hasn't been. And I think part of it's score effects as well. Like they've had a lot of third periods where they have been outshot badly because the damage has been done. They've got these big leads in the first 40 minutes. And so, last night I think they had 5 third period shots. So their shot totals don't blow anybody away. But I think a lot of it is shot selection. And JT Miller's talked about this, that one of the beauties of getting out in front and having the lead is in the third period, you don't have to put everything to the net. Like if you're the trailing team, obviously you've got to score. How do you score? You get pucks to the net. And so that's where score effects come into play. And I think for the Canucks, it does sort of change the calculus just a little bit. And for a guy like Lindholm, like look at his debut in Carolina. No real shots on goal, but 2 deflections that went in. So he didn't even put a puck to the net himself, but he redirected a couple. Those go on his record for his shooting percentage. I think we've seen a little bit of a change in the second half compared to the first. Like, opening night, 8 against the Oilers, 10 in San Jose. They scored 5 against the St. Louis Blues in a 5-0 win. There were a lot of those blowout wins in the first half of the season. Games have been a little closer. The Canucks haven't been quite as explosive, and yet they're still finding ways to win. And I think in terms of preparation for what is left over the balance of the schedule and ultimately into the playoffs, this has been a good rehearsal. You don't need 7, 8, 9, 10 goals to win most nights. I mean, last year under Bruce, they only won if they scored 6 or 7, but this is a better team, better defensively, better goaltending. And so, a lot of nights 3 and sometimes 4 is a luxury. That's just the way that they're playing right now. So, yeah, I mean, it is kind of funny that, you bring in a guy who was struggling in Calgary and he gets that Vancouver Canuck bump as well. We've been asking, 10 games in, 20 games in, is it sustainable? Well, there are 55 games and all they do is win, and they do it with a fair bit of flair and a lot of goals. So I'm thinking this year, if it's an outlier, what an outlier for the Vancouver Canucks, because just about everything they touch is coming up roses for them.
Yeah, 2/3 of the way through the season. Did you mean to say do something? Back to the do something? Okay, it just slipped out. All right.
Yeah.
Lastly, for me, Jeff, Hellebuck Demko tomorrow.
Yeah.
Winner gets the Vezina. Can we just put it all on tomorrow?
First of 3 remaining between these teams. Winnipeg will be back here on another Saturday in March, part of that big homestand. And then their only visit to Winnipeg this year is game 82. I mean, everything might be settled. That could very well be a backup goaltending battle on the final night of the regular season. So we may not have that many opportunities. I would think, though, this time around, the Jets have been off since Wednesday. Canucks obviously playing last night. Thatcher Demko, 40th start, 30th victory. So a couple of nice big round numbers for him. And what a contrast in styles, guys. Like this Winnipeg team, Mark Scheifele leads the Jets with 43 points. He's their only skater with more than 36 points. Wow. Like you look at Paterson and Miller and Hughes and Boeser and Philip Hronek, and you've got Mark Scheifele with 43 points. Kyle Connor has 19 goals. I know he missed a stretch there, but the Winnipeg Jets have 9 goals in their last 8 games, 9 goals scored in their last 8 games, but they give up nothing. Stingiest team in the league by a bunch. Like the Canucks are the 3rd best defensive team in the league. Winnipeg's given up 24 fewer goals to this point on the season. So great challenge for the Canucks. We know that they can score, but we also have seen some times this year when I think the Philadelphia games in Minnesota, some of these teams that force the Canucks to grind, that hasn't necessarily produced the best for the Vancouver Canucks. And so I'm looking forward to a contrast of styles. Can the Jets, dumb it down and just prevent, or can the Canucks break through and force Winnipeg maybe out of its comfort zone a little bit and try to open the game up? We shall see. But to bring it full circle, a Saturday night, we've seen some good games on Saturdays at Rogers Arena, all Canadian matchup, two teams that are near the top of the standings. It sets up well again. Should be a fun one here against the Jets.
And we'll be listening to Rinkwide. Jeff, thank you for this. We'll catch up, not Monday, because we have that matinee in Minnesota. You'll have Rinkwide on that game as well. We'll catch up Tuesday.
Sounds good, guys. Thanks.
Hey, everybody. If you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres and Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.